All right, I have my buddy Nick Spear here today, one of our followers and somebody I've find very intriguing. So we invited him on to find out a little bit more about him. Good
How are
morning,
you?
Nick.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I've been a big fan and watch all your content, and this is really cool for me to get to talk face to face.
Hmm. Cool. So let's talk about your golf background. I know
Right.
you have a pretty interesting background when it comes to golf, and I think it's
Yeah,
important. Yeah.
yeah, no. So I started golf when I was about 14. I'm from San Diego originally. I was um, a baseball player growing up, basketball, but I was about 5 feet tall going into high school. So um, about the only sport that I could play varsity was golf. And I grew up in San Diego, in Coronado specifically, and we had this great little public course where I worked at, and it was awesome. It was a great place to learn, and just really fortuitously, there was several like ex PGA Tour players that and really good golfers that were around. So I had this really cool like introduction to the game where I was, hearing stories about people that played with, Jack Nicklaus and Phil Rogers and Paul Runyon and all the way up to the 90s, and the head pro there now played on the Corn Ferry Tour, and he was playing against a lot of the guys, and then also junior golf was really good at the time. Xander Schauffele was he was at the rival high school, Bo Hostler. So there were some great junior golfers, and I got down to around scratch, maybe slightly better, and but I was late to the game, and my grades were good, and so I ended up going to Pepperdine for a year and transferring to USC. And Chris Zambri was the golf coach at USC, and at the time we were like preseason ranked number one in the country, and we had some just really good golfers at USC, and he gave me a pathway to try to make the team. It was probably a lot tougher. It was basically entailed like qualifying for USAM or winning a Golden State event or something. And by that point, I knew that grades were kind of going to be my path for the rest of my career. So he gave me the opportunity to work with the team as like a team manager, practice assistant for 3 years, and that was a really awesome experience. Many of my like best friends to this day were just my roommates, and I really got to see their progression from being 18 years old to now. Two of them are on the PGA Tour, and or one has full status right now. The other one's had status last couple of years, and he's going to be back there very soon. In addition to like the great women's team and a bunch of LPGA players, and um, I've loved golf. I'm a huge golf nerd, which is what brought me to your page because you post some great content and things that I like to talk about and read and watch. And I've just always been really interested in the game, and I seek out good instructors, and I just my mind never shuts off to it. And right now I'm a practicing attorney. I'm actually in my office at work, but I think much to my boss's chagrin, like the majority of my time when I'm not working is spent thinking about golf. And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at these days.
That's cool, man. You know what I like about you? Your optimism is your optimism and humility is contagious. I really enjoy talking to people like yourselves. I mean, you've watched my blog, you've watched the podcast. Everybody's coming from different. So every once in a while, I get a guy like Andreas Cali who's like relaxing, and then he's
Yeah,
somebody who could probably be.
the game is it's really humbling. I mean, I'll go out with buddies from work, and they'll look at me like, "Oh man, like you hit a driver 280," and then I'll play with, my friend who he was the number one driver on the PJ Tour last year, and like he's like, I hit my 3 iron like in 280, or like so. We'll go out to dinner with some of his friends that are out there, and it's like you're not even in the conversation. You're just there to listen. So, um, you know, I think that also just, I've heard so many people, and I'm not sure if there's any one way to approach it. So I think I'd take like just a lifelong student approach to it. Is, there's always things to learn and things to offer, and it might not work for you. But I started a Instagram like golf page recently, and I said it's like results may vary. It's going to be contradictory, but that might be what you want to hear, and that works for you, and it might not work for somebody else. And I think that that's the beauty of the game.
I, I agree with you, and we're going to get to your Instagram page shortly. But I think that if more people took the approach of just enjoying the journey and the
Hmm.
setbacks and the snapped clubs and and whatever you throw in the lake after you couldn't carry the
Yeah,
water, that's all part of the experience, and that's kind of like that's golf. You know?
yeah. No, it's so cool because it means so many different things to so many different people. I mean, you've had a lot of good people talk about like Ben Hogan lately, and to him it was like a lifeline. It gave him a completely new life, and I was had some fond experiences where I'm sure the statute of limitations is up on it, but like we had a really good like culture of like money games back at the old when it was under older management. Um, and that brought in some like really good players that wasn't necessarily like money that would make anyone broke afterwards, but it was really fun to see that like people battle it out, exchange money, and then go drink afterwards, and the winner buys somebody a beer or whatever, or or they write a check and you never see them again. But um it just means so much, and I think that like especially a lot of my friends post COVID are enjoying the game, and there's the whole like grow the game movement, which I kind of have mixed feelings about, but ultimately I'm softening up to. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I personally, so grow the game in a country like the United States is saturated with
Hmm.
golfers is one thing, but expansion in those niches, for example, like Dominican Republic, I really like to
Yeah.
grow the game there. So if you can
Hmm.
incubate, I don't know, 100 major league ball players a year or more,
Yeah.
and some of those guys are probably going to be very good at golf, right? And
Yeah.
as an industry, and I think from a business standpoint, the more you expand that market, the more lucrative it is for people who live off the golf
Yeah.
industry.
I completely agree. I mean, I grew up in San Diego. There was a great like youth on course program, and now I live in Phoenix, and we still have it here. And I mean, they're those things that we do well. But I heard your conversation with James O, where you were talking about, um, I think bringing youth on course, or was it a different program to the Dominican?
Well, the thing is that there's a junior golf,
Yeah.
and they focus on junior golf, but when you're talking junior golf in a third world country, you're talking soccer moms with a caravan, right?
Hmm.
Okay, a soccer mom with a caravan is very upper middle class. You understand? If you can afford a
Yeah.
caravan, and if you can take your kids to these tournaments, then you're probably doing pretty well for yourself. You can
Yeah.
fly them into an AJGA event or a U.S. Kids Golf in Florida, which is Miami or
Yeah.
whatever. But then there's the kid that's fielding ground balls with a milk carton. You
Hmm.
know, that's another.
Mariano.
You know, what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got to sell newspapers or do whatever he's got to do to
Yeah.
hustle to help out in the house. So that's the demographic I'm more concerned with.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. We had There's a cool course in San Diego called Kalina Park. It's a par three course, and it's all it's like a 501(c)(3) charity, and there's a lot of events and stuff to support it. But it's really like it's almost it's a truly like a playground sometimes, and it's cool, but it's cool to see. And they have, you know, like, well, I haven't been there in a few years, but they had like a simulator, and you see these kids, and they might not have ever hit like a driver on a full course, but you talk to them and they have like, oh, you know, I have 17 hole in ones. I'm like, what? You have 17 hole in ones? Play this par three course. And there used to be a tournament, I believe, where it was like the top University of San Diego kids. It might have been San Diego State would play like the top junior kids at Kalina Park, and the junior kids gave them a run for their money. And I think they would win a fair amount. Just and these were kids that just, you know, didn't have clubs. They would walk there and after school program and hang out and do it. So I think Jack Nicklaus said like a golf. There's no better place to learn how to grow up than a golf course. So I completely agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I keep forgetting that you're in Arizona. I
Hmm.
keep thinking you're in San Diego. So in Arizona.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's go back to your golf days. When
Hmm.
so who let's some of the instructors you've worked with.
Okay, so when I first showed up at the range, I think the first time kind of by myself, there was an older guy who was on the end of the range named Caesar Sinuto. He played, I think, I'm gonna get the stats wrong, but like 16 years on the PGA Tour, and by that time he was in his like late 60s, and um, you know, you wouldn't really think anything of it because he was so low key, but he was like, hey, you know, you kid, you got some talent. Like you should do this. Like you play baseball. I was like, ah, you're too short to play baseball. Like come play golf. And I, he really instilled this confidence in me because I was like, oh, he thinks I'm good. In retrospect, I think he, you know, was a really good salesperson, but um, he taught me so many really good things and kept it simple and really um, you know, the heroes that he had were and people he looked up to kind of became my own. And he, you know, he was one of those old school guys where he thought like kids should play blades and, um, you know, make it tough, be like, you know, the old days. And so I kind of took a lot of that to heart and was kind of skeptical of, you know, certain things in the game because that was just what he taught. And unfortunately, he passed away around my junior year. And so I kind of started just reading everything because of that. Um, I got lucky that one of my neighbors growing up was an ex PGA Tour player. His name's Lenny Clements. He also played about 18 years on the PGA Tour, or had his card 18 years, and he's got some cool stats. Like he was the green and regs leader in '95, and he had some of the really insane amount of cuts made and things like that. And so um, he always gave me guidance, but it was always like, let's go play and just talk to me about your game, not like meet me at the course and once a week kind of instruction. So um, he kind of enabled me to, you know, look into different avenues. I would say that I learned a lot from like Steve Elkington and the Secret in the Secret in the Dirt website and some of those like all the forums back in the day, including, you know, yours. Um, I think that like just being part of a conversation and learning things kind of piqued my interest. And then, you know, by the time I was at USC, we our coach had a really interesting approach to golf. It was he never cared about your swing. It was completely like data driven. Um, but it was all basically every shot they hit was scored and calculated. And there was a target on every shot. And it was really funny because there was one player that used to fight him and be like, Coach, I'm hitting it bad. I need to work on my swing. And coach would be like, no, you don't get to work on your swing. Like you got to hit this shot right now. And that player came to me afterwards. He's like, like I didn't understand at the time, but now that I'm out here on the mini tours, you realize he was teaching you that you need to hit it close because like you need to make a cut and that's just what you got to do in that moment. Um, so I think that really changed how I looked at golf, and I was really like into that for a while, and I still am, and I think it's a great way to practice. And then by the time I knew I wasn't really playing a ton competitively, which was really just like amateur events, um, I reached out to Mac O'Grady and I got to spend some time with him and kind of got that world. Alex Moore was really like important to me to kind of introduce me to that world, and we enjoy good conversations all the time. And then I guess like lately, like Robert Rock, he's on Skillest, but he's a great guy, and like I would say, he gets really kick out of all of my questions and things that I just basically that I all the details I want to know, even though I work in an office and I'm not trying to play for my career. So a lot of really cool perspectives, and I don't really think that any of it is like mutually exclusive. I mean, there are things that preferences to it all, but I think it was all kind of in the a similar side of the golf swing debate, I would say.
It's pretty cool. I mean, so you're in the lineage of you went from Caesar Sinuto
Mhm.
to Mac O'Grady,
Yeah,
probably two different paradigms, right?
yeah. Well, Caesar
Kind of,
told me Mac he's like, he was the smartest guy I ever knew. And Lenny played with Mac when they were on tour, and he speaks very highly of Mac O'Grady. And, so I was always around people that were very like pro Mac O'Grady. There are so many people that have spent way more time than him than I have. So, I'm definitely, just, had a kind of more of a brush with greatness. But I think that I guess probably fortunately for us, maybe not to his liking. Like there are a lot of people out there that are more open about kind of sharing like some of the information they've learned and kind of taking that and really you know I think most of the people are trying to push it forward. I know that might not be the case for everyone on the internet who tags Mac O'Grady in a post or uses his name, but I benefited, and I think he was really really nice to me and gave me a lot of time and information, and I can't say anything bad about the guy.
yeah, it's pretty polarizing figure in the golf
Hmm.
industry. However, I mean, when it's all said and done, he will have contributed probably more than anybody in that within that spectrum. I mean, the guy he's
Yeah,
done a lot, and if he would make himself more accessible, or maybe that's why he's done a lot because he doesn't care about because
yeah.
there's a whole camp of guys out there that from going back to the '80s, all they've ever done is commercialize themselves
Hmm.
um, off some ranking. So now
Yeah,
we're writing books, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing that. He wasn't.
yeah. And they have to keep doing books and keep doing new. I mean, I've just started posting things, and it's kind of interesting having the you know finding new ways to say things or finding what the right thing to say is. And if you're like pigeonholed to like this is the swing, I mean, there's only so many things you could talk about in like to a public audience. Like I think the nuances are the most important things, but it's hard to like really you know bring that up unless you're doing like a live lesson or something. Like I know you had Dana Dahlquist on, and it's like I think his stuff's really cool because you can get like an inside look and kind of get more of the context. And ultimately I don't think anyone would give you it's I think it's really challenging to give advice to a public audience. I think there's like ranges and good things to think about, and but that's why I have those kind of caveats where it's like this might not work for you and do it at your own risk, but if it does work, there you go, like this is where it comes from.
You're putting that disclaimer right off the bat.
Yeah, it should always come with a disclaimer. If you're not, unless I see you and I talk
Yeah,
to you and know what works for you, because I've had little friends that they talk to me about their games, and they're professionals, way better golfers, and they'll be like, "Ah, I need to swing more left." And it's like, "You got any ideas?" And it's like, okay, I'll give them 4 ways to think about it, and they'll be like, no, no. I'm like, have you just tried just taking a divot left and seeing it and like, oh yeah, or try this setup and they're like, oh yeah, that's the one. I used to do that back with my coach when I was a kid. And then, it's that art of it's the difference between being an instructor and being a coach, really. And finding, knowing the information and then being able to teach it is kind of two different skill sets, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say that you're absolutely right. And uh, I spent some time up there in Valencia with Greg, and
Mm-hmm.
he could sit there and regurgitate. He's got the option of sitting there regurgitating 6-3-B this that,
Yeah.
and never he doesn't make sure that they know that, and you get to just how just feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And as the more you go along, the more it just starts to flow, and then you're like, okay, then
Yeah.
it's and before you know it, you develop a nice swing just by not
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
it's funny because yeah, you talk to some of these guys that are like, some of the best in the world, and I'll just be like, okay, like, what are you really thinking about? And or they'll tell me something, and I'm like, okay, that's really interesting that you said that, but it would help literally no one. Like no, like no. If I put this in Golf Magazine, like so and so thinks about this, like they might get worse. Like, but they're so used to thinking about target and thinking about things. And I think it's important to you know I think they definitely do things differently, and I think that that's what makes them better than the rest of us. But um, there's golf's improvement's not linear, I would say, and as there's technical, there's physical, mental, there's pressure. There's so many different things, and it's this kind of like petri dish of different factors all coming together, and hopefully you make a championship golfer, somebody that can win a scramble, or you know who knows, whatever you want to do.
Well, I mean, you said it. There's so many different things going on, but how much can you really think about in the course of 1 second? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's how long is a golf swing? It's like, I don't
1 second.
know. And
Yeah,
you could walk in there with all kinds of stuff going on, and the likelihood of you executing, what you're thinking is like very, very low, very, very
yeah.
slim. So I'm watching your Instagram page. It's actually I like it, and
Thank you.
it's thought provoking. It's outside the box, right?
Yeah,
But if you think through it, it's kind of like, yeah, and that's what I think. That's some of that. That's what's lacking today. Is you know,
yeah. Well, I think part for me is um, I kind of have two goals with it. One is I've always kind of wanted to be a golf writer, and so I'm a transactional attorney, so I read and write pretty much all day. So I enjoy that even when I'm not working. Um, and I think it's some of the people that I've talked to have said if you have a following that really helps you, because magazines might be like, that's great, Nick, but where's your fan base that's actually going to buy the magazine, or want to buy a book or something. So I think that I decided to do it for that reason. The other thing is, I've really been an observer to the golf game, and I think I just wanted to kind of put things out there that was interesting, not because it's like me, I think it's a good idea. It's more so like most of the content's been like, this is a cool parallel between what Jack said you know last week at Memorial and what Jackie Burke told him 40 years ago, or this is a cool thing I read that more people should read about it. It's not like I think I'm the next best instructor. I'm not selling anyone lessons. I mean, if somebody wanted to ask me to look at their swing, like maybe I'd look at it if we could. It would be fun. But it's I just think it's a really cool game, and there's um, I think just given kind of the background that I've had, I have such an appreciation for like the history of golf. Um, but I'm also, still in my 20s until next week. I turned 30 on Wednesday. Um, but so I'm also, part of this era that's seen like, the game grow really young, with all these tours and knowing these guys. So I have an appreciation for both sides. And for whatever reason, I think like there's this weird paradigm where there's this like stuffy detractors think there's like a stuffy country club that hates that you ever like will even think about playing music on the golf course or, you know, and then there's people they think there's young people that all they want to do is, you know, get really drunk and crash golf carts. And I'm sure both exist, but like, you know, there's really cool things happening in the game of golf. History tends to repeat itself. I think that, if somebody wrote a book about like the rabbit era of the PGA tour, like, you know, that would be really cool, and people would love it. And, some of the great books have just been revisiting the great stories of golf, like, the Francis we met, the match, like, I was looking at the book about Johnny Miller at Oakmont. It's like, the golf is the star, people, the players are the star, like everything else is just, kind of keeping the legacy of it forward. So I'm kind of trying different content stuff and just kind of seeing what I like, but it's really at the end of the day, it's ultimately kind of what I'm interested in. But yeah, I don't know. It's really cool. And I just, even in a couple weeks, like seeing people engage with it that I would never have thought that I could actually like have a conversation with some of these people that are, I've looked up to for a while.
Mm, that's interesting. You would say that. So my ex roommate, we
Hmm.
were roommates for like 5 years in New York. He was an associate
Hmm.
at Wachtell Lipton, the
Okay.
Rotary Cats here.
Yeah.
That poor guy was. He worked on but the partner he worked under was Ed Hurley. You know who Ed Hurley is, right?
I know the name, but I don't know the
He's on the
back.
board. He's the guy who did the live the
Oh
live
yeah. Okay.
major.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Jimmy
Yeah.
Dunn and Ed Hurley. So
Hmm.
indirectly, I wind up my first driver
Hmm.
I ever owned came from him. So
Oh
the
wow.
Bobby Jones S2H2 first Callaway. So
Yeah.
but I remember my poor guy was like, he's trying to make partner. And I was
Hmm.
like one law firm in the world at the time, and
Yeah.
it was not he had no sleep. No, it was. I mean, I'm sure you're not in that boat, but that's just
Yeah.
this little golfy, lawyery type thing that occurred.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, we were lucky because when I was at USC, there's a player. Are you familiar with Stu Hagestad?
Yeah,
I've only met
yeah,
him.
he's on this coast now, right?
I
Mid
think
Am.
so. I've only met him once. I don't know him, but if I if I ever got to meet him again, I know like people that knew him really well who were just, older in the USC golf cycle. But I guess if anyone doesn't know him, he was a really good player, got recruited to USC. I think he, kind of focused more on the business side. And I think he was doing finance and just decided after graduation and doing finance for a little bit, like maybe I want to, try some amateur golf. And I, I'm not sure if he's there yet, but he might be like the one of the most like longest tenured like Walker Cup players at this point. Like he's played in, multiple Walker Cups, US Opens, Masters. He even made the cut in the Masters. And I know he still balances like a professional career. And he's really cool. He was when he decided to come back, I'm confident he was a lot better at golf than, you know than what I'm at now. So but he was kind of an inspiration of like, okay, if um, you're really dedicated with your time, and you make the time, you can do these things, you can practice, you can go play, and at least play well. I don't really enjoy playing golf that I feel like is embarrassing in competitive settings, like like most people. But um, yeah, so is it was really cool, and like I said, I've only met him once, but uh, yeah, I think he's like the patron saint of mid ams.
Yeah, well, I'm from an. I mean, I'm now a senior, but I go back to Jimmy Dunn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jimmy Dunn was competing here in the Met section amateur events.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember Jeff Thomas.
No.
That's a name you should look up.
Okay.
Great, great. He's probably the greatest golfer I can remember around here.
Okay.
Plainfield South. He's just a career fuck up, unfortunately. He wound up dying in Florida, and
Mm,
found he was pounding. He was somebody who they would give him jobs on Wall Street just to
yeah.
keep his amateur career alive. And I was playing with Ronnie, I forget his last name, who's from the same club, and he's like a legend in the Met section. Uh, Met amateur champ, was won it all. He's playing like in the regular division. He's like almost 70 years. He wins the Met amateur when he's 55.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
like, you get guys like that that are just enjoying the competition, raising a family, and going to work. And there's quite a bit of that. Ken Bast,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's the head guy at Friar's Head.
Okay. Yeah.
George Zaringer third is another name. That guy never won the U.S. Amateur.
No.
I forget the guy from Connecticut, Jerry Corville.
Okay.
There's a bunch of those here, at least in the Met section that people have just you know
Yeah.
and yeah. So
That's the thing. So I had like one post that like for whatever reason it just like kind of took off. I was kind of surprised because I haven't been doing this too long, and it's got like over 100,000 views, and it got a couple thousand likes. And I gotta be honest with you, I think I looked at every single like profile just because I was like shocked. I was like, who are these people?
why would they like it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I have like 50 followers and like or at that point, and I grew a bunch, but I looked at and I was just like sitting there. I was like, okay, this guy plays at SMU, and like this guy's on the Sunshine Tour, and this person used to play on the DP World Tour, and this person, and the game was so big. Like it just like in my mind, I was thinking like, okay, every home course has the best player at their home course, and every college, for the most part, they got college, teams, and they're getting fresh recruits every year, and there's people trying and chasing the dream. It just kind of dawned on me, like, you know, how many good golfers there are in the world, and it's a tough life. My best friend in the world, is he was my roommate in college, is Rico Hoey, and he was a really, really great amateur golfer, was the best player at USC. And when he was like a senior, he was, up against John Rahm and like, Colin Morikawa and um, a bunch of names. And, he didn't have the success right away. And I know it was really tough because, like there's a lot of people, and the PJ Tour U wasn't in place, but you know, his stories, he's talked a lot about it, is, he, had Corn Ferries Tour status, lost it, was working at his home course, you know, decided to give it a try again, played Golden State, got to Corn Ferry Tour, had the best year of his career, he's been on the PGA Tour for his second season. He's, knocking on the door for some wins, and he just kept going. And, you know, it's, like I said, I'm not speaking from experience, but I have so much like empathy for people that are chasing the dream, and it's really tough, and I think it just makes it so much more profound and sweet, like when you do see people really, and that's why I like those kind of like the story, like talked about the rabbits, like it's really cool. I mean, everyone loves Tiger and the Stars, but like when you hear a really cool story of people like overcoming and making their way, or a journeyman that wins, like to me that's really cool, because I think most people struggle with golf, so I think that people can empathize with the struggle of it, and I like those types of people.
Yeah, I mean that's the storyline that I played. I'll, I'll I'll send you the whole article. I
Hmm.
played with Jesse Patino was his name, right?
Okay.
I'm playing with him here at Telemus public golf course. There was nothing. There was nothing overly impressive about him, right?
Hmm.
When we get talking, he says, "Yeah, I'm a senior tour player." You really? I
Yeah.
get talking. I think the guy's just BSing me, right? I
Hmm.
get home. I say, I gotta Google this guy. Nicest guy in the world. Really
Hmm.
good guy. Jesse Patino. So he starts off. The Wall Street Journal did an article on him. He was like a handyman. He had a
Yeah.
truck, like a truck full of, you know, all kinds of tools and stuff, and just doing, whatever
Yeah.
gigs were coming. One client invited him. He's in his 30s now. One client invites him to, and I'm going to try to track him down and interview him. The
Hmm.
client invited him just to the driving range because that's what he wanted to do before they did whatever, looked at whatever. He showed up. The client wasn't there. So he grabs a club and starts trying to beat balls. And the following day, the client apologized and take him to the golf course. First time on the golf course. He got addicted. Now he's in his 30s.
Yeah.
So he's practicing every day before he goes to do his sheet rocking or whatever,
Hmm.
his pool or whatever. He becomes the winningest. He wins. I think he might have won the pub links. I don't know, but he
Wow.
becomes
Yeah.
the winningest mini tour player. Like he's won every
Yeah.
when he hits 50, he gets on the senior tour. Now, he only lasted 2 years, 3 years, but that in itself, like the
Yeah.
Monday qualifiers, that's the real storyline in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's what I find interesting. Yeah,
No, I agree. It's so I guess anecdote. Are you a big basketball fan?
yeah,
Do you remember the name Jack Sikma?
yeah.
So
Seattle, the
yeah,
Sonics.
exactly. My dad's from a small town in Illinois, and he was a really good basketball player. He's actually like Mr. Basketball in Illinois. Um, but he went to a small college called Illinois Wesleyan, and Jack Sikma was his teammate, and it was a D3 like NI school. And Jack Sikma goes there, ends up getting drafted and making the NBA Hall of Fame. And you know we've talked a lot like over the years about like you know uh, did like obviously he's like 7 feet tall, so like obviously he's gonna be good at basketball, but like did you know he was gonna have the career he did? And my dad always just said like he just kept getting better, like every year was better, and when he got to the pros he just kept getting better. And there's some really great like junior golfers at San Diego and Southern California, and like probably the one that was like the number one ranked is hasn't had the PGA Tour success, but I golfed like growing up like where Xander was playing, and he was a really really good golfer, and he was going to San Diego State, but there are guys like Bo Hostler and people going to USC and Stanford and ASU, and
Bo
he
Hostler, Bo Hostler's Texas, right?
Texas. Yeah,
UT.
yeah, he went to Texas. Um, but I was in high school when he, was in the hunt and like leading an Olympic, and he was like a god to us because it was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. At least to me, because at that point I was just trying to shoot in the 70s. I was like, this guy's leading the U.S. Open. But I think like you look at somebody like Sanders' career, he just keeps getting better. And like it was just a methodical progress from San Diego State to the Corn Ferry Tour to getting on the PGA Tour to getting wins to being a multiple time winner to winning majors. And USC coach had something where he was like, if you ask or if somebody would smart off to him, you'd be like, go ask a PGA Tour player, like, how much did you learn about the game of golf after you turned 21? And he's like, they would laugh at you and tell you they've learned everything after that. You just keep getting better. And, I think that's just a part of it is, I think the people that I've been able to see, and that's the cool thing is like seeing where, I knew people then and where they end up now. And, this person wasn't the person that I would have thought would be the major winner on the PGA Tour. I would have thought it was this one. Well, what makes this guy differently, or what did he do, and how did it work out for them? And, I don't know that there's a magic formula, but, just I think that you look back and you look at some of these people and the ones that were not the stars necessarily at junior golf, you know, keep if they keep plodding away,
Okay.
they can catch them and
We
even
lost.
pass them at certain
We're
points.
back.
But yeah, are you there?
Mm.
Oh, there you go.
Well, one of us is gone.
Can you hear me?
All right, Nick.
Looks like you're stalled out for a second.
You still there? Let me call you.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Your video froze up, but I don't know
My
what's
video?
going to happen on the other end. Anyway, let's seal the deal. Okay, it's been great talking to you. I want to check in with you from time to time so we can keep discussing different matters. Okay. I know one of us is unstable.
That'd be awesome.
I'm not sure if it's me or you.
Yeah, I should be hardwired in here.
So let's do that.
New laptop, so I don't know.
Yeah.
It was mostly fine on my end.
Okay. Well, yeah, one of us is not coming in properly. I don't know if your friend might have a VPN or there you are. I think you're back to normal. No, you're frozen. Okay. Yeah, I got 100 gigs, so I don't know if it's. I'm right next to the thing here. So. All right, Nick. So why don't we wrap it up? I want to get to the airport, and I'll do an editing. I'll run it by you. You can look at it. I don't think there's. If you don't like something, let me know. We'll take it off. And,
okay.
like I'm going to take down that stuff I said about what's like the mid-amateur stuff. I don't need to tarnish his legacy.
Yeah.
Jeff Thomas. But
Jeff Thomas. Got it.
Yeah, I don't. That does. But
all right. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
But thank you, Nick. Have a good one. All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, hold on.
Looking forward to talking again.
And let it come on. Yeah, hold on a second. I don't want you to close the app because we're both at 99. Issue, something went wrong. If the problem persists, let me refresh this.
Okay.